Hello, and thanks for joining me. I'm Gil from Gil Crafts and Graphics, and what I'm going to be showing you today is the process that I use, my workflow basically, in order to create coasters for my wife, and at the same time using my S1 to do this. So I'll go from the design process using Microsoft Edge in order to get several different samples. That way I make one coaster. I'm going to make 4 of them. That way I could use a different style design for all 4. And then after that, then the process of setting up multiple items in order to engrave them by using the Xtool creative space. And then just go through the whole process of both lacquering first the coasters, after I lacquer them with a matte or a gloss finish. That way I engrave into that, giving me a nice contrast between shine and dull. And then showing at the end product of all this. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks a lot for being here. And hopefully it's useful for some of you guys. All right. Well, good morning. Well, it's a nice day today, which is a good thing here out in the high desert. And I'm getting ready to coat my coasters with a clear acrylic. You could use anything. I just happened to pick this up while I was in the area. I end up stockpiling anyway after a little bit. Something that a lot of us will probably do. But anyway, that all being said, what I'm doing is I'm coating it first. That way, when I laze the image under, I'll have a good contrast between the slate and the material that is engraved. If I try to seal the white portion, which is actually the lazed of the black slate, what happens is it darkens it. So then the contrast isn't as heavy. Now remember, slate material could be cleaned off and everything pretty well. So right now it's worked for me pretty good. So I made sure that I cleaned up everything with alcohol, laid it out, and then now all I'm going to do is spray one good even coat. Make sure I get all the edges. I'm going to let it dry for about 30 minutes or so. And then they'll be ready after I do the designs on the computer, because I'm going to give her a set as a gift. So stay tuned. The show now is my workflow from going from design to creative space. I'm not going to go into the software. I use Photoshop, but you could also use Inkscape, and also you could use GIMP. Those two are free, and they will help in case you have to do any cleanup. So I've already done it already. But basically this software, it's called Image Creator. You put in a prompt of what you want, and then what it does, it gives you 4 different designs. Right now, obviously I'm not going to do a tutorial on this software itself, but yes, it is an AI. But I use it so that way I could generate fast GIFs, whether I'm getting into something for Easter, my wife's gift that I plan on doing, or if I'm getting into some symbolism for whether it's Shogun, or like for example I want to do something for Year of the Dragon. Right now I make sure that if it's something that I'm going to be selling, I make sure that it's not something that's trademarked. So you have to go through that process, but this allows me to go ahead and work with what I have. So I've created my 4 designs. They're not perfect. They'll have anomalies with them, like the C is missing, or they'll have some strange thing written down here, which I'm going to most likely put in my wife's name. This one's not too bad, but I might clean this up right here, and then I will clean this up as well. But like I said, I'm not going to go through that process. So from here, like I said, you write in your prompt, you tell it what you want, what you envision in your head, and then it's going to try to come up with something that's influenced through the World Wide Web. No different than if you were to just sit down and start sketching and drawing. You're influenced. So I use it so that way I could spend enough time trying to get what I need done quickly, and something that, since it's something for a family member, it's a gift, so not a big deal. After you create that, those that you like, make sure you hit saved, and after that you start downloading. So I downloaded it, and you can see here I already named it, but what you do is, for example, you could hit save as, and then after you create your folder to put it in, you go ahead and I'll just call this SC5 because I don't want to delete the other ones. Just hit save, and then you go from there. Now the next step is, once you've already downloaded the designs you want and you've put it into the software, like for me Photoshop, I cleaned this one up. So now that I've done this, I'll go ahead and I'll export it, and I will export it as, you could export it as a JPEG or a PNG. It'll recognize it. And so one of the nice things about basically the creative space. So once you've done your work, from there what I do is I go to creative space. Now what I want to do is I want to put it in there and prep it. So obviously I'm not going to show all 4 preps, but I am going to show what I do once I bring it in. And I don't want to use it as a ditter, basically a lot of points being lays, but I want to use it as a line and fill. So that's why it's just going across. So first thing I'm going to do is going to go to image. I'm going to find that which I save. Okay. Now when it first brings it in, you'll bring it in just like I inverted it in Photoshop, which, or you could do in either one of the other softwares. I'm not going to do it a bitmap image type processing, but I am going to trace it. It does a pretty decent job, so I'm not going to mess with it anymore. It seems to do pretty good. Then I'll click save. Okay. Once I've done that, I'll take my outline, right, the tracing, I'll go ahead, I'll click on that, and I'll hit delete. Now from here, what I want to do, since I made the changes and I did so, I want to make sure that I have it in engrave. Right now it's at 129, and what I need, since it's going to be 4 inches, so I need to put it about a little bit smaller. So if it's in there, so I'll go about if you can't figure it out, like I can't sometimes, so what I do is I go here and I go to tools and I look it up. So I go millimeters and I go to inches. But what I'll do, since I want to put it, that'll fit between a 4 and 4, maybe I'll go 3.5. So it's going to give me a millimeter length and width of 88.9. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to go up here and I'm going to go 88.9. Now it's pretty much the size I need it. And I'll do that with the other 3 designs. Once I get ready with that, I'll take this file to my S1, or basically I'll save it, and then I'll place the coasters to do a multiple job, or call it a batch, and then we'll go from there. So I'll be showing that process next. Okay, so for the next step is I finally got all my designs in there. Right, you can see all 4 of them here. These are the ones that I'm going to do for the gift. Now, what I need to do now is set up basically the area. You know, it's not a jig, but basically where all my slate material is. So what I have to do first is, in the software itself, I have to mark where this is so that it has, you know, where I could place these things, which is kind of nice about this process. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say start marking. So what that does is, as you see me go away, I start marking the spots, and you'll see probably most likely with the action on there. So since I have their square, I'm going to use this one. It gives me at least a 2-point area. So I'll click on that, and I'll say start marking. So what I'm going to do as I step away is I'm going to show, you'll probably see on the screen where this begins to mark. Okay, so let me go ahead and do that. And so what I'm going to do first is, you can probably still hear me, and I'll press the front button and take it to each location. So right now is set there. Now once I say there, since I have 4, all I'm going to do is I'm going to click marking. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here again, which I wish they had another thing like again or repeat or something like that, because right now it's not letting me. So let me go ahead and I'm going to mark here, and I'm going to do my second order. So I'll put in, and I'll get my edge. I'll go back here. I'll end that. Oh, you get to see it too happening. So there's the second one. I'm going to go ahead, and you'll notice up here now it tells me what these 2 items. If it's no good, I'll just go ahead and click that off. So that's kind of nice. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my next spot and mark where that coaster is. Mark that. And I'll go here. I'll mark my second one. You can see that. I'm going to end the marking for that slate coaster. So I'll hit end. You can see now where it's placing it. You're probably already seeing pretty much what I do is I just place the crosshair right on the corner of the area that I want, that I'm marking. And that's basically, I'm using the 2 corners from my slate coasters. Once I've done that, I'll go ahead, I'll end marking. Now I have my 4. You can see pretty much how the layout is. And then I'm going to click done. Now when I do that, now I can see, and I'm going to hit control and then go back 1. And then control and back a little bit. I'm going to grab my items I want to do. So I'm going to do this one first. So I'm going to try to line it up as best I can into center, using my arrow keys to mark it. Go ahead and do the same thing for each one and put them in place. Now I have a space from the edge. It's because I have pretty much, I'm making up for basically when you look at the chipped edge of any items. So I'm talking about this ridge right here, which basically becomes undesirable. So I want to make sure that my image is in the middle. Okay, so I'll get close to them, and as I get close to them, in which I'll go through that process later. So I have already, because you probably saw I just showed you my my test material or pattern. So I punched in those numbers on that pattern, and I set it for each one, even on the whatever it may be. All right, so I'll click on here, and I'll have the same thing, 307, 80, right, power 80. And I'll go to my next one, making sure that it's all correct. And then this one, and I'll go through that, making sure that everything's on engrave. And then those things I don't want to do, I'll either put yes or no. But what I'll do is, since I've already done this one down here, I'm going to tell it to ignore. So that way, when it does its output, I'm using the space bar to set this up. Hit down to control, use my mouse wheel, and brings it forward for me. Using the space bar again, I can move and go into greater detail, looking at spacing and seeing if it's hitting. Pretty much I'm going to eye it a little bit, so that way I definitely get in the area I want it to be. Right, making sure that everything is squared away. Then once I've done that, I'll do the same here, looking at where all the edges are, using my arrow keys. There you go. Then the next thing is, I'll frame it so that I could look at it real quick. Already set all your locations. The next thing is just the frame. So I'll go here and I will make sure that my machine, you can hear it, it's framing the area that it considers where it can print, and then it will lead itself back, and that's what you need to do. So once you've done that, you've framed it, it's complete, you're ready to go. I'm going to double check because I want to make sure that my objects, I'm holding the space bar down, I want to make sure that it's pretty much centered. I'm going to do it by eye. Usually that works really well. Half decent. Pretty much have that imagined how I'm going to see it. A little bit more. I'm using my arrow keys once again. I'm just double checking, make sure that I didn't lose out on anything. Yeah, you're going, yeah. It's like, you know, like cutting wood. Measure twice, cut once. Okay, so now I'll hit, then the next thing is just getting it to process. You click on process. And then once it gets to thinking, because it's processing all that information, basically what it has is it has a lot. And we're going to look at it. What you're going to see is, since I've already done one of the coasters, you'll see it blank. But normally what you'll see is you'll see the layout there. And then once you think everything's going, it's going to tell me it's going to take 200 minutes. It's like, ah! So yeah, 3 hours and some odd. Why it's running slower, it doesn't matter. It's probably because I have a higher resolution on it, and I'm doing it at a slower speed versus my little 10 watt, which I ran it to no end, and it was just cranking things out in 20 minutes. So I'll leave that alone. That's for another day. So once I've done that, I'll just go ahead, go up here, and click start. After I click start, you guys will then see the results of my products. All right.